Yeah, hi everybody, welcome to Planning Committee B for October. We've got a little bit of housekeeping to do first of all for everybody. So if there's a fire alarm, it'll be a real fire alarm. So just follow us to any exits and we'll show you the way out. In terms of phones today, if everyone to make sure their phones are off or turned to silent. And when people are speaking, if I can remind you to use your microphone, just make sure that the green light is showing on there and you press the button. I just want to say for public participation for speakers, I'll invite you up at the time that you come in to speak. You'll have 3 minutes to talk. I'll just start talking when you're ready and I'll start the timer from then. And we'll give you a 30-second warning before the end. They will then have an opportunity to ask you questions. So if you can just stay there until we've had the opportunity to do that, and then I'll release you back down. So you know, and we'll stop at the end of each item to let people leave. So you're not staying around if you don't want to. We'll move on to we've got a couple of substitutions today. So we've got Councillor Steels-Warshaw substituting for Councillor Baxter, and we've got Councillor Cuthbertson substituting for Councillor Hollier today. Because Councillor Hollier isn't here, we're going to have to elect a vice chair for the meeting. I'll have to look for people to propose somebody to be vice chair for this committee, just for the purpose of doing any items afterwards, essentially. Yeah, Councillor Fenton. You have to.
Yeah, seconded.
Seconded, great. Councillor Fenton, you're the vice chair for the meeting. So thank you. First item is declarations of interest. Ask if anyone has any to put forward for the meeting. I can't see any hands. I'll just declare. So for transparency purposes, I used to work on the council development team that worked on the item at Dane Avenue. But that was a couple of years ago and I was never involved in the planning application itself or the design of that scheme, so I don't feel it materially affects my decision making for the item. Next item is the minutes from the previous meeting. Does anyone have any comments on these? I can't see any, so we will take those as being approved with a minor amendment in relation to the apologies and those who attended. We don't have anyone for item 3 for general public participation. So the next item is 100 Main Street, which there is a request for deferment. If you could take us through that, Gareth, please.
Thank you, Chair. Requesting deferral of this application. Drawn to our attention that the BAT survey expired at the end of August, and because of that, additional surveys may need to be undertaken to confirm the status of the buildings as the BAT roofs has not changed. So I'm seeking deferral.
Thanks, Gareth. We'll just, in that case, unless someone has anything to add at this time, we'll move to a vote on the recommendation to defer the item. If everyone can raise their hands if they're happy to defer until the next committee. Yeah, that's unanimous. So that item is deferred to the next committee date or when they're able to bring it back. Something I meant to do, sorry, before we started up on this one. Before we move on to the next item, you'll see that there's quite a number of additional information for the next couple of items. I just want to give people a minute or two to make sure you've read through those, because partly on Dane Avenue, but especially on the next one, there's quite a lot of new information. So I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to look through that and then we'll pick back up. Okay, thanks for that. So we'll move on to item 4B, which is 36 Dane Avenue. Gareth, could you take us through the presentation for that, please?
Thank you, Chair. So this application is an outline application, but includes for approval details of access, layout and scale. So this is the site, or the former site of 36 and 38 Dane Avenue. These properties, this is I think a street view from about 2013. So these properties were found to have significant structural issues and so were demolished. And this outline application seeks permission for two detached dwellings on the site. So that's its the former appearance. I say existing site plan. The dotted line is the pre-existing situation. So this is the proposed site plan. So as I say, two detached dwellings, slightly different, as you would expect from a new contemporary scheme, different location on the site, both orientated along the respective boundaries and sitting forward of the previous positioning. What's proposed in terms of scale, the proposal is for two-story dwellings. It's a Google Earth image. For members who joined the virtual site visit, I think there might have been a bit of confusion about which property the objection had come from. So the objection was received for number 40, which is this property which sits to the northeast. So this is 40, site of 38, site of 36, and then number 34 sits to the south. And then a more up-to-date street level image. One from the site towards number 34. And then towards number 40. Number 40's garage is shown centre shot. Go back to that. There's a update in front of members. We have received an additional consultation response from the Ecology and Countryside Officer, requesting that the biodiversity enhancement plan includes at least one bat box and one box for nesting birds. We've therefore, on the second page, we've amended condition 15 to reflect that request. We've also amended condition 12. Condition 12 is related to carbon reduction for new buildings, and that's been amended. The second paragraph there has been amended to align with the updated policy CC2 in the local plan, which aims to seek reduction in carbon emissions of up to 75%, but that is subject to feasibility and viability tests. Over to the second page, we've also amended condition 13. Originally, that condition, as in the agenda papers, stopped at the point where it says 7.5 metres. So what we've done here, because it's a sloping site, we've added some wording which requires the identification of existing ground level and that to be set. So we can control on a sloping site the finished floor level, so it doesn't overly impact on adjacent properties. And that's it for the update and presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the plans, officers? Yeah, Councillor Errol, please.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the conditions on condition 12, putting them into conditions that we haven't done in recent times. Could I ask, we're talking about building regulations 2013. Why are we using those rather than the more recent ones?
That's the benchmark. I think because the building regulations were changed in 2021. So they were the local plan, obviously there's a period of preparation of the local plan. So so that when the conditions were devised, the 2013 building regulations were what were in force. So that's always been the benchmark to which the policy has been derived from. So I think you might recall maybe last year or the year before, we were in a situation where our policy had been the change to the building regulations caught up with the policy, apart from perhaps 1 percentage point. So that's why we revisited it in terms of this 75% saving when changes to that policy were consulted on earlier this year.
Thank you, Chair. That's welcome. That. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Councillor Passy, please.
Thank you, Chair. In addition to that, just to note for members of the committee that I welcome this too. I would note that in many London boroughs, that second paragraph would also finish by saying, in the event of the carbon reductions not meeting the target that's set out, there would be a levy for a contribution for any shortfall in carbon emissions, for the shortfall, for the extra carbon emissions that are being produced, that the councils can then use to help to retrofit council buildings and other public buildings. I hope we'll get there in the not too distant future.
Okay, thank you. So there's no other questions now. We have got Tim Moon, Community and Self-Build Officer from CYC here as the applicant. He isn't here to speak, but if anyone has any questions, then he can come up and answer questions. Does anyone have anything they'd like to ask to the applicant on this? Yeah, thank you. If you come up, Tim. Yeah, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered when the decision was made to propose 2 detached properties rather than semi-detached on there, and when the decision was made to make these self-build rather than put it out to a recognised developer. It's just self-build to me is something that could drag on for years. And the fact that there's 2 detached dwellings on there, I can fully understand the objection from number 40. Just if you give us a bit of background to it, please.
So to answer those questions, they were demolished in, I believe, 2020. And at that point, it was felt that it wasn't, with our existing housing delivery programme, it wasn't felt that it was worth diverting officer resource into rebuilding 2 council houses there. Under the Self-Build and Custom House Building Act 2016, the council is required to keep a register of people who are interested in building their own homes. And we're also required to deliver enough planning approvals to meet that demand on a rolling 3-year basis. Now, we're currently down on those numbers under that legislation, as most councils are. And this was felt that this plot was a way that we could help boost those numbers. To address your point regarding the timescales and how long it could drag on for, within the contract of sale and the deed of transfer, we will have long stop dates in terms of when they needed to have applied for planning, where they needed to have got planning, and then when they needed to have started and when they needed to have completed that. If they miss those dates, we will have step-in rights to buy the properties back from them. Now, on our Lowfield Green development, we had the same things, and we've not had to use any of those because people have hit those dates. Does that answer all your questions?
And I assume that going down the self-build route was the reason that there's 2 properties instead of 1 semi-detached.
Correct, yes. I knew there was something I'd missed. Yes, if you've got 2 individual self-builders trying to build a pair of semis together, it's a lot more difficult. It's not impossible, but it's a lot more difficult, and it was felt this would maximise the sales receipt to the council.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any more questions for the applicant? No, in that case, you can take a seat again. Thank you. Do traditionally have, if anyone has any other questions for officers following that, come back for that. Councillor Melly.
Thanks, Chair. It was just a question about drainage systems. What's the difference, just, I don't know, either practically or in planning terms, between the drainage systems being a reserved matter or being a pre-commencement condition on the outline planning?
Drainage would always be a condition. The reserved matters are set out in legislation. So they only cover, testing my powers of memory here, layout, scale, access, landscaping, and the other one, appearance. So they're not specifically related to those more technical details. So they would always be covered by an individual condition on the outline. And it has to be secured at outline stage as well. Couldn't be added later on to a reserve matters.
Yeah, Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a follow-up really about reserved matters, because it mentions 514 about amenity in the neighbour, and I'm just wondering, it says something about a full assessment on amenity will be possible once detailed drawings are submitted at the reserved matters stage. So, how does that work in relation to that? Into the impacts, or what do the reserved matters enable to minimise the loss of neighbours' amenity, please?
There's a bit of, with outline permissions, there's a little bit of crystal ball gazing, because we don't get that many in York, largely because we have a lot of conservation areas and they're not appropriate in such locations. But so we have to deal with what we have. So we have the layout here. So we've looked at the distances from the boundary, and we've looked at the positioning in terms of in terms of number 40 to the north, to the east here. It sits pretty much side by side. Here it's number 34 to the south. It sits forward of that dwelling, but previously it sat forward as well. So the officers made an assessment of whether squaring off that relationship with the boundary would be harmful, and they've come to the decision that they don't think it would be. In terms of scale, we don't have any massing drawings or anything like that. Scale has been submitted almost in terms of a description that it'd be 2 stories and similar in height to the adjacent properties. So that's translated into that condition, which I pointed out in the outline, in the update, which states it shouldn't exceed 7.5 metres. So that's a maximum height. And then because of the sloping nature of the sites, we put the condition on about agreeing ground level, so where that 7.5 metres would be measured from. So we shouldn't have a situation where it looms over the neighbours. And then in terms of the architecture, where the windows are overlooking, that will all come out in terms of the reserve matters application for the appearance of the building. So then if we'll get another application which will show us the picture of what it looks like from the outside, and then we can assess if there's any windows which are unneighbourly, or if their interpretation of that 7.5 maximum height is such that it causes problems in its own right. We could seek amendments at that point.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the discussion stage at this stage we're just talking about. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Move on to discussion around the officer recommendation at this stage and voting on that. If anyone would like to get us started. Yeah, Councillor Waters.
I think the old premise of this development on this site is wrong. We heard from the officer, it's about maximising the revenue to the council. Surely it should be about providing affordable housing, or better still, council housing on that site in an appropriate form, which would match what's already there. And it should be built in such a way as to minimise disruption to neighbouring residents, which self-build clearly won't. And I appreciate they're not planning reasons for refusal, but I'll be saying that the layout is an incongruous feature. That would be my reason for refusal. I don't know what others think, but there's been so much said about providing council housing that this is an ideal site.
Yeah, Councillor Bassey, please.
Yeah, I have some sympathy with what's just been said. My comment relates to something else. The additional consultation response. I'd like to suggest that the recommendation in terms of ecology simply says that keeps the phrasing the way it is already, requesting biodiversity and plan includes at least one bat box suitable for crevice dwelling species, and one swift box be provided per dwelling as part of the development. I'd like to just see us take a proactive step forwards here for biodiversity. It's a incredibly small additional cost when building a building. This is the opportunity, and I'd rather see us declaring that rather than leaving it vague, so someone can just put a bird box on a fence somewhere later.
Yeah.
I didn't include, because it's quite lengthy, I didn't include the wording of the informative, but the informative does give advice on aspects of biodiversity, includes swift boxes, sparrow terraces, bat tiles and bat boxes, and then gives location advice. And they would be subject to approval. So they will need to be, to get that approval, they will need to be located appropriately.
Thank you. But there's nothing then to prevent us from simply adding that as a recommendation as part of approving this application, is there?
Sorry, can I just to clarify? So you're saying that you specify the bat box and a swift box,
And a swift box per dwelling,
in addition to, and one box for nesting birds, is it?
or alternatively, I just think we need to make progress on swift boxes, because there is now very clear and easy ways to incorporate these into brick walls that is only available when you're building. For £100, you just have a brick that is a swift box, that behind it has a cavity that is a space for a Swift. That can only be done when the building is going up. All the rest of it can be done at any time. So it's just to include that as
Okay,
part of that.
okay. I mean, there's nothing in the condition that precludes that, and it is linked to that informative. But if members feel that it's particularly important to specify it, then that's.
I would certainly like, I mean, I'm happy to hear what other people have to
I'll
say.
second that, Jim.
Sorry, councillor Waters.
I think you need to be very clear what you're actually asking for, because to actually say Swift boxes or bird boxes is somewhat different from the bricks that are profiled to allow Swifts in. I think it would be well advised to get the proper wording before you put anything like this down.
Yeah. I think in future this is likely going to come up again. So I think it's worth, as well as doing that, if we do take it forward, we just discuss how that could be changed for future conditions. So we pick it up in future all the time.
Yeah.
But we can get to that. That's worth doing.
Well, the informative refers to them as Swift boxes, and then has a link to a relevant website.
Yeah, I understand Councillor Waters' position. I think that could be done afterwards, can't be? Just the wording of it to be clear that that's what we're talking about. I'm quite sure that can be left to officers. Yeah. 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 And as long as officers are happy to do that wording and we're happy to approve that, that can be simply attached later, can't it?
Yeah, I think that's supported. Yeah. In regards to does anyone have any further to add on this? Just in regards to your comments, Councillor Waters, on there, I think from my understanding of self-build and having worked in the council before, and working in housing development, there's an issue with building a small number of homes and the costs related to building a small number of homes. So any proceeds from this will go back into building additional houses elsewhere. So sometimes it's about, efficient usage of resources and how we generate money to spend elsewhere is potentially what they're thinking about, would be the only thing I'd add on that. Does anyone have any further discussion? Councillor Fenton.
Yeah, I think that there's an interesting debate around self-build. I've got a similar plot in my own ward, but I think the priority is bringing this site back into productive use as a site for homes, and what's been proposed, I don't think has. There's nothing about the orientation of the homes or the size that would give me any grounds for refusal. So I'd be happy to support the officer recommendation.
Yeah, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a shame to lose housing that's an affordable tenure and have it replaced with housing that's not of an affordable tenure on council land. But if it's not viable due to the scale or location or whatever it is to have affordable housing on the land, then everything else in planning terms seems all in order. So I'm happy to second the officer recommendation for approval.
Okay, thank you. Just had an addition. I don't know if you want to mention at this stage, Gareth. So we don't have a condition for cycle parking. Is that correct? Cycle storage?
Yeah, it was something I was going to add to the update when I noticed earlier today there wasn't a cycle parking condition. So that would just be our standard condition requiring cycle parking to be details to be submitted, and for one space to be provided per bedroom for each of the property suitably enclosed.
Yeah, I'm going to assume there's no dissent to cycle parking, so we'll include that in recommendation. In that case, can you take us through the recommendation, please, Gareth, before we move to the vote?
So the recommendation is to approve the application subject to the conditions in the agenda pack as amended by the amended condition 12 13 and 15 as setting out in the update, and then with that additional cycle parking condition further.
Great, thank you. Okay, following that, we'll move to the vote on that recommendation. So first of all, if I can see people for votes for the officer recommendation, please. Yeah, and those against as well. So in that case, the officer recommendation is moved and that item is approved. I'll just give a 2-minute break if anyone would like to leave in terms of public participation, then we'll pick this back up. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. We will move on to item 4C, Gareth, again, so this is the York Racecourse at Racecourse Road. Gareth, if you could take us through the presentation again for that, please.
Thank you, Chair. York Racecourse. It's the southern end of the racecourse enclosure. Involves the erection of a pavilion, canopy with covered seating area, single-story extensions to the Busted Thorpe stand and associated landscaping and infrastructure. And that's following the demolition of some existing buildings and structures. That site plan's not particularly helpful. That's a bit better. So the site, Google Earth shows us the site. The application site excludes the buildings at this extreme southern end. You can see the site is enclosed by a wall, and then the Busted Thorpe stand to the west. The site extends up to this bar, which is a marquee type structure. Includes that. And you can see, just in terms of orientation, the course itself, Racecourse Road, the multi-storey factory at Terry's, and then this is the under construction Brain Injuries Trust building, which is probably almost completed now, I would imagine. It is completed now. So that image was taken from the south, so looking this way. So here's the Busted Thorpe stand and the buildings which currently form the application site. It's a demolition plan. So that shows the demolition of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buildings and extensions to the back of the Busted Thorpe stand, and then the removal of this of the marquee for the Roberto bar. So buildings to be removed. It's flat roof structure, second flat roof structure. It's tiled roof structure. It's the Roberto bar. These 2 flat roof structures, and then the single story additions to the back of the stand. Post site plan. So it's a new building to form a bar area. Replacement extensions at the back of the stand. And a canopy which would cover seating. And then changes to the landscaping in and around this eastern side of the enclosure. That's the stand as existing. In elevation, it's easier to pick out the additions to the rear. Just here, they run across 3/4 of the width of the stand. And a photograph of the structure that we're talking about to be demolished. In its place is proposed more up-to-date extensions for bar and hospitality areas. Two photographs of other structures to be removed, the bar and the tote, and then the marquee structure, which is the Roberto bar behind that. This is a proposed replacement. So a larger structure, a significant slate roof, quite open because it's a bar servery behind these columns. Pick out from there. So this is the servery area. queuing areas, back of house. There's another structure to be demolished, and just with reference to something that will come out in the update, these columns here form part of an updated condition where we're seeking their removal to be incorporated elsewhere in the development. Getting a wider look at the structures to be demolished. These I didn't change that. Perspective, not prospective. So this shows the extension to the back of the stand. You can see that. The canopy. And then further back against the elevation of the large stand to the north, the Roberto bar. And you can see the run of the extension to the back of the stand, and then the canopy. This is taken from the east, and then the new bar, and perspective from the rear of the stand. So again, it cuts through the bar, and then you can see the canopy outlined against the retained wall and structures along that eastern edge. That's it. Let's go back to that. There is an update of some significance. There we can flick through that.
Chair. Quite a number of updated consultation responses and also conditions following on directly from that. The first one is from public protection in respect of gas monitoring and the requirement for a gas system to be put into place. And then ecology, commenting on the revised landscape plan, which is supportive on the basis of it being catered specifically for pollinator species. There'll be a further revised condition in relation to that. Conservation itself, particular comment made about the coped stone coped brick pillars to the Toke building, which would be demolished. It has been confirmed that they would be reused to form the entrance to the new service court, which can be secured by means of an addition to condition 4. It originally questioned the use of slate for the Roberto bar, but the choice of the palette of materials was in relation to its location has now been accepted. Trees and landscaping, raised no objection, subject to the additional conditions. Flood risk management, again, no objection, subject to adherence to revised drainage plan. Additional conditions, turning the page, relate to gas protection system being put into place. Biodiversity enhancements in accordance with the most recent ecological mitigation plan 1524001 revision A. Landscaping and trees, a significant tree in the centre of the site to be retained. So a landscape scheme is sought together with an arboricultural method statement and an arboricultural impact statement in respect of works around that. With the extension to the rear of the Bustard Thorpe stand, sample panel is sought along with recommended amended conditions, updates to plans under condition 2, and condition 4, large scale details, reuse of the coped brick pillars to the Toke building, method of fixing for the solar panels, solar PVs to the rear of the Bustard Thorpe stand, and also details of the planting box at parapet level to the Bustard Thorpe stand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for officers on the plans that we've just seen? Yeah, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question to Eric. The solar panels to go on the back of the grade 2 listed stand. Did that? Is it? Right. I just can't get my head around putting solar panels on a beautiful slate roof like that when there's all the modern stands available at a much higher level where you couldn't see the solar panels. Was it a direct suggestion from the Racecourse, this, or was there influence from the council to include these? Right.
Thanks. Doesn't look like we have any other questions at this time. We have one person for public participation speaking in support as the applicant. If William Darby could come forward and speak.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me to talk in support of our application to develop the southern end of York Racecourse, the site on the screen behind you. Really the area to the left of the big Knavesmire stand that was built in the 90s. And really the whole objective of this scheme is to improve the experience of people coming racing, working at the racecourse in this area, and really bring it up to the standard of the rest of the complex, the rest of the site. York Racecourse, as you probably know, is one of the leading racecourses in the world. In 2020, our flagship race was rated as the best race of every race run in the world. In 2022, we had the best turf thoroughbred racehorse win our flagship race in August. And just this last August, the highest rated horse outside Japan won the Jubilee International, Group 1 Jubilee International, our best race. As a racecourse, we're really proud of the fact we've been voted Racecourse of the Year by the Racegoers Club, the Racecourse Owners Association, and the Stable Staff Association, the only racecourse to sort of unite those three belts of any racecourse in the UK. We've been very proud to stage racing between May and October in the city since 1731. And it's really through the quality of our facilities, the racing we put on the track, and the welcome both from the team at the racecourse and our home city that stands us out as one of those leading racecourses in the world. At the racecourse, we're determined to retain that position, and it's only by investing and innovating and delivering a consistent experience across the site that we'll be able to do that. As you'll recall, Wim, the Knavesmire stand was built in the mid-1990s. The big Ebor stand was built in 2002. The northern end development, an important development for us around the Grade 2 star listed building, the John Carr building, was delivered in 2015. We then moved into the centre of the track to the picnic enclosure. The clock tower enclosure was delivered in 2018. And this is a logical progression of our master plan to improve the experience of racing in the site. This is really aimed at our grandstand racegoers, the sort of mid-price tier racegoers. There's no hospitality involved in this development. It's all about the racing fan, giving them a better experience. It's not about increasing our capacity. It's about increasing the enjoyment and the experience of people experiencing in this area, and especially consistent, because to the right of the picture, we give a really good experience. To the left, maybe not so much. So it's bringing everything up together under one umbrella. In terms of what we're creating is a much better facilities, toilets, catering, betting facilities for the racegoers, a landscaped brand new lawn areas under a canopy. Work very closely with the Eden project to ensure that the grass can grow under.
But if you just finish what you said.
Yeah, under the canopy. There's one thing I would like to add. Our sustainability environmental policy is really important at York Racecourse, something we've been working on over the last 5 years. We've reduced our carbon footprint by 51%. We're the only UK independent racecourse to sign up to the UN Charter for Sport for Action, Climate Action. And this scheme has embedded environmental into it. Can talk about that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, questions. Thank you for that. Questions. Councillor Waters, I'll start with you.
Thank you, William. like everything Racecourse have done for the last few years, top quality proposals. I'll be quite happy to support them, but I just want to query again about these solar panels on a beautiful slate roof. Now, you've said about sustainability and such like, so I can understand why you've included them. Would it be possible for the square footage of the solar array on there to be relocated onto the modern stands is my question.
The challenge, and I'm not an expert, yes, we wanted to include a level of PV in this application. The Knavesmire and the Ebor stand have so much kit and air conditioning and buildings maintenance on them. There's not much room to put the UV panels on them. There's already a preheating water system on the top of the Knavesmire stand, and it was felt that if we could be self-sustaining within this development, then that would add, a carbon neutral effect to the scheme. So that's why we chose this roof space to put the panels on.
Sorry, supplement.
Just as a follow-up question to that then, would you look at using solar roof slates, the smaller arrays rather than PV panels? I know they're expensive, but
they're less efficient. You get less bang for your buck. I know they've got them on the refectory building, and we went to look at them by the Minster. They're less convertibility of solar energy. So we sort of we looked at that, but went in a different direction. But
right, Councillor Steele-Forshaw.
Thank you. I noted on the thing that, and you spoke about the improvement experience for workers.
Yes.
This says currently there's 1,300 jobs. Is that currently by the site, or does that mean extra workers? And if there's extra workers, extra full-time workers, of kind of how many do you know would there be for?
So the 1,300 is an economic impact study commissioned by Sheffield Hallam University, and that's the Racecourse as an entity supports 1,300 full-time equivalent workers within the environs of York. That's one position. On a busy race day, we employ up to 1,500 people on our busiest race days working on the site. This scheme is very much about making a better induction, accreditation, training facilities, staff welfare facilities before people go on shift, and a much better organisation of that for the team that work for us. In terms of full-time additional, about 100 people work full-time at the Racecourse, 365 days a year. This scheme is not about increasing that number, but it's about looking after our race day teams better.
Councillor Bassey, you've got a question.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and thank you for your presentation. I'd like to ask you some questions about drainage and rainwater harvesting and water management. I didn't see anything in here about rainwater harvesting. Obviously, a racecourse has got a huge amount of roof area on your pavilions. Are you making use of rainwater harvesting? You mentioned that there will be a new toilet block and so on and so forth. In many places, this may be seen as a perfect opportunity to use rainwater recycling to actually reduce water consumption in an area that I think we all know has drainage issues. The Knavesmire has flooding problems. So I just wanted to get a sense of your thinking on this.
On the drainage side of the equation, there's a huge attenuation tank beneath the structure, the canopy structure. In terms of water for the toilets and the lawn and the flower boxes, the plan was to use our sustainable water supply from the borehole. We have 2 boreholes that go down to the natural aquifer beneath our feet. So, and we have capacity within our borehole license to use that. So that was our plan for irrigation and water toilets and grey water for the site.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Boreholes are not really a renewable resource in many terms, but rainwater is a renewable resource directly. So I would just suggest, I mean, for example, the City Council uses rainwater harvesting at the eco depot to clean the city's trucks. Since you're collecting all this water, it would, I would suggest, be a perfect opportunity to think it through one step further and use all that huge volume of water you will collect over the course of a year to directly flush toilets and do those kind of functions. Though I appreciate what you're saying about a borehole, it's not as immediately a renewable resource, is it? Is it something you're prepared to consider?
My understanding was boreholes was a sustainable resource for water as you could get, and was an A star in terms of environmental sustainability. That's the guidance we've been given.
Okay.
So that was what we've incorporated into the scheme. So.
But okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, councillor Fenton.
Thank you. One of the comments from Highways related to a suggested condition to secure the provision of 38 cycle parking spaces associated with the scheme. I just wondered whether that was something that you thought was feasible to incorporate.
Yeah, absolutely. And just it would, the plan we've submitted to Highways is just to have those under the white footbridge, just to the right of that photograph, to give a level of cover. So we've got a scheme drawn up to put that. A number of our staff come by cycles, a number of our visitors.
So that, for being familiar with those cycle racks, is that an addition to what's already there?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thanks.
I'll look but adjacent to them. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, councillor Clark.
Thank you. That it is a kind of supplementary to that, because it's not stipulating about 38 or anything else in the actual condition in relation to cycles. I don't think, if we look at I think it's the last condition. Yeah, 11. It doesn't actually mention 38. It just says something about cycle parking areas.
Yeah, we don't always specify that because it is for approval. So we would take that concept when we would expect the applicant, when submitting the details, to the starting point would be that consultation response. We can specify it, but it's not probably necessary to do so.
That's fine, thanks. But it sounds like there might be actually more than 38 by the sounds of it. So
Thanks. Well, we can pick that up in discussion. Does everyone else have any questions for the applicant? No, take a seat. Thank you very much. Before we move into discussion, does anyone have any further questions for officers before we move forward? No. In that case, we'll move into discussion voting on the officer recommendation. I think it's also worth everyone to discuss the proposed condition, just to make sure we're clear on that as well. I'd like to start off. Yeah, councillor Fenton.
Yeah, I think what Mr. Darby said sort of assured me that 38 provision would be picked up and be the starting point for the discussions between officers and the applicant. So I'm comfortable with the condition as is, and very happy with what's proposed in terms of improving the experience for staff and for racegoers at this end of the racecourse, and would be happy to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Waters.
Yeah, and I'm quite happy to second that. It's a world-class operation that we have in the city, and I think it deserves support. I'm still not keen on the solar panels on that old slate roof, but I realise something like that isn't going to stop this, so I'm quite happy to second.
Thank you. Yeah, I fully agree. Does anyone else have anything to add before we move to a vote? In that case, Gareth, could you take us through the recommendation, please? I think we're happy to keep the conditions as they are, so.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is for approval of the scheme, subject to the conditions as set out in the agenda papers as amended in the update, and also with those additional conditions as set out in the update.
Thank you very much. So yeah, if I can see votes for the officer recommendation, first of all. Yeah, and that's unanimous, so that is approved. Thank you very much. The last item is urgent business, of which there isn't any, so we shall call an end to proceedings there, and I'll thank everyone for their time. Thanks.